I knew something was off the moment Trent forwarded me a calendar invite for a meeting I'd scheduled. My name was nowhere on it, just his smug little signature line, VP of Operational Innovation, whatever the hell that meant. 14 years at Vireon Systems, and I'd never once had to fight to stay on a call. Suddenly, I needed to request access to meetings I created. It didn't happen all at once. That's the part that really kicks you in the gut. The unraveling came slow, like watching a roof leak during a storm, drip by drip, knowing it's only a matter of time before the whole damn ceiling caves in. My hands had been on every single operations workflow in that company, from supply chain tracking to invoice batching to compliance logging. I built half of it, cleaned up the other half, and babysat it all like it was my firstborn. I knew where the paper trail started, where it doubled back, and where it was quietly set on fire. And still, I smiled, trained the kid, answered his questions, nodded through meetings where he explained things I'd invented back to me like I was the intern and he was Moses descending from Mount Salesforce. Quick pause before we go any deeper into this corporate fever dream. Do me one favor. If you're listening and your finger's not broken, tap that subscribe button and hit like. I know everyone asks. But seriously, 90% of folks don't subscribe, and it keeps the team alive and mildly caffeinated. Plus, this story, you're going to want to hear how it ends. Back to Trent the Blessed Nephew. He was brought in to shake things up, which, as anyone over the age of 40 knows, is code for cut costs and blame the people who remember how things used to work. Within a month, vendor calls I'd managed for years started vanishing from my calendar. Contacts I'd nurtured since Bush was in office were suddenly being routed to Trent's assistant, a girl who wore glitter eyeshadow to compliance briefings. I'm not judging. Glitter has its place. It just shouldn't be in a room discussing contractual breach clauses. The kicker, one Thursday, I logged into the compliance portal to update a quarterly certification, and my access was denied. Not expired, password denied. Full on, you do not have permission to view this resource. That portal was mine. I'd helped write the internal SOPs on usage. When I reached out to IT, they said the permissions had been updated per VP directive. I didn't even bother to reply. I just sat there, staring at the screen, mouth dry. I wish I could say I stood up that day and stormed down to HR with a righteous fire in my belly, but the truth is, I closed my laptop and went home early. Stopped for gas on the way, made lasagna, pet the cat. Sometimes you don't realize you're being erased until it's already happened. A few weeks later, they changed the internal document sign-off system without notifying me. I found out when a vendor flagged a missing invoice signature, and when I checked, Trent had retroactively signed off on it. I was still listed as the primary approver in the system, but my name had been crossed out like a typo in a Word doc. No explanation, no call, just gone. I started printing things. Contracts, change logs, email threads, call it paranoia or call it instinct, but when the house starts to burn, you don't ask who lit the match, you grab a fireproof box. One night after everyone left, I stayed late and checked the vendor compliance logs from my admin terminal, one of the few places they hadn't booted me from yet. Sure enough, Trent had skipped 2 certifications on our highest risk supplier. Not flagged, not pending, just skipped. I screenshotted the logs, backed up the timestamp metadata, printed copies and slipped them into a folder marked Q3 binders in my file drawer. That's when I realized this wasn't incompetence, it was a setup. He wasn't just trying to replace me. He was trying to erase any proof I'd ever mattered, so I started rehearsing for the day they'd walk me out. And baby, when they did, I made sure the last page they'd see had my name on it, bolded, underlined, and triple initialed. Paragraph 12C, it was a Tuesday. That detail sticks in my head like a bone chip. Not a Monday where you expect misery or a Friday when they usually save the bloodletting to avoid lawsuits over the weekend. No, they picked a Tuesday. Middle of the week, middle of the quarter, middle of a sentence in a budget planning deck when my team's notification popped up. Please come to HR. Now, no context, no subject line. Just now, I knew. Don't ask me how. You don't give 14 years of your life to a place without learning its scent before the rot sets in. I stood up, smoothed my blazer, and made the walk down that weirdly quiet corridor like I was marching toward my own autopsy. They didn't even bother closing the blinds. As I stepped in, Marcia from HR was already sitting at the little round table with a manila envelope in front of her like it was a peace offering, or a loaded gun. She looked up, smiled, and said the words that are still branded in my memory like a hot iron to the ribs. We're letting you go. No preamble. No, we appreciate your contributions. Not even a faux sympathetic head tilt. Just letting you go like I was a balloon they got tired of holding. I sat, didn't speak. She slid the envelope over and started with some scripted language about departmental consolidation and cost realignment efforts. My eyes flicked across the paper inside. Termination letter, effective immediately, last paycheck processed, and right there in bold, no severance. I looked up. I assume this is a mistake. Marcia didn't blink. Your position is being eliminated. You're classified as at will. That disqualifies you from severance per company policy. My laugh caught in my throat like a dry cough. 14 years. I've got coffee mugs in this building older than Trent. Marcia didn't flinch. Didn't care. I could have told her I performed CPR on the server room, and she still would have handed me that envelope with the same damn look. And then, because the universe loves poetic cruelty, I saw him. Trent, standing right outside the glass wall, arms crossed, watching like it was a talent show, and I just bombed my tap number. The grin on his face wasn't big, just tight and smug, like a man who thought he'd outplayed someone but had no idea he was sitting on a live grenade. I didn't say anything, just turned back to Marcia. I'd like a copy of my signed contract before I leave. She blinked. Why? Because I asked. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't flip the table or throw my office chair through the window, although God knows I wanted to. She fumbled, clicked a few things on her laptop. It'll be sent to your personal email within 24 hours. Send it in PDF format, not Word. I smiled just enough to unnerve her. Wouldn't want it accidentally edited. That's when I noticed her eyes dart, just for a flicker, to the head of HR's office down the hall. A twitch of unease. Good. I stood, took the envelope, and walked out like I was heading to lunch. Trent gave me a little wave. I didn't return it, didn't even look at him directly. But as I passed, I muttered low enough only he could hear it. You're going to wish I was just another layoff. Then I went home, closed the blinds, took off my blazer, poured a whiskey, opened my filing cabinet, pulled out my original employment contract, the one I'd kept in hard copy all these years because unlike the new blood, I didn't trust the cloud with my life. I flipped to the back. There it was. Paragraph 12C, at will, not during an active audit cycle, not when certain conditions were met, not when the company had received pre-certification notices from state auditors, and definitely not without triggering a review clause tied to my termination. They wanted to save a few bucks? Fire a non-essential? Cool. Let's find out what it costs to silence the woman who built the operating system they just flushed down the toilet. I sat at my kitchen table, the termination letter still unopened beside my elbow like a dead mouse a cat left on the doorstep. Didn't need to read it, I'd already memorized every cheap phrase Marcia had droned out. Cost realignment, at will classification, no severance applicable under current policy. Corporate poetry for thanks for keeping the lights on, we'll let Trent handle the fire now. But what they didn't realize, what they never bothered to ask, was that I'd learned how to swim with sharks long before HR started passing out floaties. I sipped my whiskey, opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. There it was, in a navy blue folder labeled Kayla Final. Original ink notarized, my full employment agreement. I flipped through it like a priest with a Bible in a burning church, searching for the verse that might still save me. And there it was, page 3, halfway down, paragraph 12C. In the event of involuntary termination during an active internal or external audit cycle, wherein the employee has direct or historical oversight of audit-relevant systems, severance and indemnity shall be awarded in accordance with Section 9, regardless of at-will classification. Termination under these circumstances shall trigger a legal review clause requiring third-party compliance counsel. I leaned back in my chair, breath caught somewhere between a laugh and a growl. They really hadn't read it. I remembered exactly when I'd added that clause. It was 4 years ago, after a vendor transition went so sideways we were 3 days from losing a 7-figure government contract. I'd spent 72 hours straight rewriting workflows, sleeping in the office, living off vending machine trail mix and broken promises. When the dust finally settled, the company handed me a revised title and a new contract. I'd made sure 12C was slipped in like a razor blade in a birthday cake. It was built for this exact moment, termination during an audit window. I didn't even need to prove motive, just conditions, and I had them in spades. Still, I wanted backup. I called a lawyer I'd been referred to by a friend in procurement, Ili Rabinovitz, niche firm, specializes in executive contract disputes and gray box terminations, the polite phrase for getting axed without fingerprints. He answered on the third ring sounding board. Rabinovitz, hi, this is Kayla Turner. I was referred to you by Gina Alston. I think I need someone to look at my employment contract. Just laid off, yeah. You have severance language, not exactly, but I have paragraph 12C. There was a pause, send it over. I'll call you back. I scanned it in, highlighted the clause, hit send, then sat there listening to the fridge hum and my cat snore under the radiator. 15 minutes later, my phone rang. You're sitting down? Illy asked. Yeah, they screwed up, he said, badly. He walked me through it like a calm, slightly amused surgeon. The clause wasn't just enforceable, it was trigger-based. Meaning if certain audit flags existed at the time of my termination, the protections automatically engaged. The audit didn't even need to be underway, a pending notice was enough. What's your department again? He asked. Operations. Oversaw vendor compliance, contractor classifications, and procurement scheduling. There was a low whistle on the other end. And you were terminated while any of those areas were under pre-audit review? I smiled. State sent a notice last month. Procurement flagged a vendor for late submissions. Perfect. This is surgical. We don't scream. We don't threaten. We just watch them hang themselves with their own compliance string. I exhaled long and slow. My chest felt hollow, like something had been scooped out, but not in a bad way. More like space being made for something else. Not vengeance, not even justice. Clarity, I wasn't getting my job back. I didn't want it. That desk had been stripped of its meaning the minute they let a spreadsheet with Trent's name on it erase 14 years of proof I gave a damn. What I did want was exposure. Truth. The kind that bleeds in boardrooms and leaves a trail in audited financials. I told Ali I'd retain him. He gave me his encrypted upload link. I started dragging files in, emails, change logs, vendor communications, screenshots of retroactive sign-offs, all of it. Then I went to bed. Didn't cry, didn't rage. I just dreamed of Trent trying to explain a missing compliance clause to a man in a government badge holding a clipboard. I spent the next 2 weeks in what I can only describe as monk mode. No Netflix, no doom scrolling, no wine unless I could name 3 procurement violations first. My kitchen table transformed into a war desk, laptop open, folders stacked like sandbags, printer chewing paper like it had a grudge. I didn't rage, didn't cry. That part of me was done. This wasn't emotional anymore. It was arithmetic. Ali introduced me to a forensic accountant named Priya. Small woman, sharp eyes, voice like a scalpel. She didn't waste time asking if I was sure I wanted to pursue this. She just asked for read-only access to everything I had and then sent me a spreadsheet template labeled Unethical Activity Preliminary. We started with payment lags. One of my responsibilities at Vireon had been to track vendor payout schedules. Government contracts are picky about this, pay late, and you trigger a chain of compliance headaches. I pulled the logs, cross-referenced vendor payout dates with actual processing dates. Found 4 instances, where Trent had delayed payment past the 45-day window, then retroactively marked them on time using a bypass function I hadn't seen since we decommissioned our old invoice system 3 years ago. I flagged them, dated them, noted that all 4 vendors were ones I'd originally blacklisted due to high-risk profiles. Priya didn't react, just typed and nodded. Next, contractor classifications. Under federal guidelines, anyone classified as an independent contractor must meet certain tests: autonomy, project scope, equipment ownership. We'd failed one of those tests years ago and paid dearly in fines. I'd personally written a new internal policy to prevent misclassification. Guess what Trent did 6 months after arriving? Deleted it, quietly. I found the deletion timestamp. Found the new classifications he'd signed off on. Pulled screenshots of contractors using at Vireon Systems emails, company equipment, company meetings, company ID badges. Violation, violation, violation. It started to feel less like building a case and more like documenting a fire in real time. Priya and I didn't talk much. She'd send a note, need backup for invoice #7213. I'd send over the PDF. She'd reply, got it. No emojis, no pleasantries, just surgical focus. We were butchers in a fraud morgue. Then came the kicker. Buried in an old expense report, I found a vendor invoice marked Approved Emergency Exception. It had Trent's name on it. Approved retroactively, 2 weeks after services were rendered, using a temporary override code I had created during a cybersecurity drill 4 years ago. A code that should have been retired, archived, and locked in compliance logs. Not only did the override violate internal controls, it violated federal contract procedure. Government contractors can't retroactively approve vendor work. It's not just shady, it's criminal under certain clauses. That alone could nullify the contract Vireon held with the state of Illinois, worth $9.3 million. I sent it to Priya. Her only reply, this is big. We'll need to timestamp everything and mirror the metadata. I nodded as if she could see me, then got to work flagging the folder, encrypting copies, and uploading them to an external drive. Meanwhile, Ali filed a silent hold request with the state auditor's office. That meant if the audit moved forward, our documentation could be reviewed in parallel without notifying Vireon just yet. Because, oh yes, the audit was coming. I found it in a quarterly compliance memo buried inside the procurement SharePoint archive. Vireon was scheduled for a full-cycle state audit in 30 days. Trent either didn't know or didn't care. Either way, the clock was now ticking. Every day I didn't speak publicly made them feel safer. Every moment they thought I'd slink away, embarrassed and unemployed, made them bolder. Good. Let them reroute budgets, fake reports, reshuffle teams. Let them believe the ghost of Kayla Turner was safely out to pasture. Because I wasn't coming back with noise. I was coming back with receipts. The photo came in at 8:14 p.m. on a Sunday, right as I was folding laundry and pretending to live a normal life. The message was from a burner Gmail account, but I recognized the phrasing immediately. Procurement. Someone I'd worked with for years. Someone still inside. The image showed a trash cart in the back hallway near the freight elevator. It was heaped with shredded paper, binders cracked open, tabs still visible. On top was a plastic sheet cover with a handwritten label that made my stomach drop straight into my shoes. Ops old files. I stared at it for a full minute, towel still half folded in my hands. The timestamp was from 2 hours earlier. Weekend cleanup. Quiet disposal, probably logged as document consolidation or some other sanitized euphemism for arson. They weren't just cutting me out, they were burning the blueprints. I zoomed in, recognized a section divider from the 2022 vendor compliance audit, the one I'd completed in Q4, cross-verified with 2 senior analysts, and submitted to our cloud archive myself. Just to be sure, I logged into my old portal. The document ID was gone. Entire record deleted, not archived, not renamed, erased. Now, for normal companies, that might be routine. But when you're holding an active contract with a state government, deleting finalized compliance records during a pre-scheduled audit window is like chucking fireworks into a gas station. At best, it's stupidity. At worst, criminal negligence. I called Ali. They've started erasing documentation, I said. They're shredding files labeled under my department. There was a beat of silence. Then, good, let them keep digging their own hole. Your job now is to document them. Every move, every deletion, every bypass system. Won't they just say it was routine? They can try. But they've already locked themselves into a timeline. The more they clean, the more metadata they corrupt. And we have the originals. I exhaled. My jaw ached. I hadn't realized how tight I'd been clenching it. What about the deleted vendor compliance report? I asked. That one's a gift, he said, especially if it was tied to an active vendor. Was it? Wexler and Dunn, they're still on the approved vendor list. Ali actually laughed. Oh my god, this just keeps getting better. I didn't feel better. I felt hollow. Betrayal's funny like that. You think it'll come with explosions, speeches, maybe a dramatic parking lot confrontation. Instead, it shows up as a blurry JPEG of your life being fed into a cross-cut shredder by someone who never bothered to ask what those binders meant. I went quiet for a couple days after that. Didn't call Ali. Didn't email Priya. Just gathered, watched, refused to be baited, and then on Thursday morning it happened. A message request popped up on my LinkedIn. Not a recruiter, not a congratulatory bot. The profile photo was a man in his 40s with short cropped hair and a cheap tie. His headline read, Senior Compliance Officer, State of Illinois. He didn't use company email, just LinkedIn messaging. Miss Turner, I hope this message finds you well. I'd appreciate the opportunity to connect regarding your former role at Vireon Systems. I'm working on a scheduled review that touches on departments you may have overseen. No pressure, but if you're open to a brief chat, please let me know. I stared at it for a long time, didn't click accept, didn't decline. I just let it sit. Lee had told me not to move too fast. Timing was everything, especially when your opponent was too busy trying to cover their tracks to notice the footprints they were leaving behind. So I screenshot the message, saved it to the encrypted folder, marked the date, and I waited, because the moment you respond, the clock starts ticking, and I wanted them to keep getting cocky. Keep shredding, keep logging into systems they shouldn't be touching. Every act of panic, more evidence, more leverage. They thought silence meant surrender. But I wasn't quiet because I was scared. I was quiet because I was loading the next round. The audit notice hit Vireon like a drunk deer through a glass door, loud, jarring, and far too late to avoid the blood. According to Priya's contact at the state office, it was hand-delivered on a Wednesday morning, time-stamped at 9:13 a.m., and addressed directly to the legal department. Not emailed, not faxed, hand-delivered. That alone told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just a random compliance check. It was the kind that arrives when someone somewhere has smelled smoke and wants to see what's burning. By noon, I'd gotten word of the chaos through 3 separate text chains and one mysteriously anonymous email that simply read, Your boy Trent just tripped over his own dick in the all hands. I found a copy of the email minutes later. Subject, proactive transparency and the importance of compliance culture, Trent's usual word vomit. Something about leaning into accountability and collaborative clarification efforts, and my personal favorite, building bridges across audit channels, which I'm pretty sure was just a fancy way of saying, please don't quit en masse now that the state's breathing down our necks. He CC'd half the company. Forgot to BCC the legal team. Rookie mistake. More importantly, the email confirmed what we needed. Vireon had acknowledged receipt of the audit request. That was the final trigger condition for paragraph 12C. I forwarded it to Ali. He replied with a single line, game on. Later that day, I got a call from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. Hi Kayla, this is Linda from HR. Just wanted to follow up and let you know we've revisited your offboarding terms. Given the confusion around your classification and the recent organizational shifts, we're prepared to offer a retroactive severance package contingent on a quick NDA signing. It's a very standard confidentiality clause, nothing unusual. Please give us a call if you're open to finalizing. I must have played that voicemail 6 times, listening for a crack in her voice. There wasn't one. Just that rehearsed HR tone that says, think you're dumb enough to take a check in exchange for your silence. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent it to Illy, who practically exploded over text. Illy, retroactive severance equals admission of mishandling. We'll bleed them for that. Me, they want me quiet. Illy, and we're going to make them pay for every decibel. The quiet fury set in, thick and cold. I wasn't even mad anymore, I was surgical. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. Crossed that threshold weeks ago, when they tossed my career like expired office yogurt and hoped I'd just disappear. That night, Illy laid out the next step. We were going to force a formal review of my termination file using a procedural leverage point built into paragraph 12C. The clause requires outside legal review if the terminated employee held audit-relevant oversight duties and was let go during a pre-audit window. He reminded me. We already have both. What do we need to trigger it? I asked. Just the right question sent to the right desk. No lawsuit yet, just pressure. It'll force their general counsel to engage, and once they do, they'll realize HR put them in a legal minefield. That's when we name our terms. Won't they just settle? They'll try. But we don't take their first number. He was right. They were already trying to buy me off with severance like it was hush money at a family reunion. But they didn't realize this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about precedent. It was about every woman they'd cut loose under the banner of cost savings, every binder they'd shredded, every file they'd deleted while high-fiving in the glass conference room. They could spin it all they wanted, but the audit was coming. Paragraph 12C was real, and I wasn't done watching them sweat. I clicked on the LinkedIn message from the compliance officer for the first time, still didn't reply, just hovered my mouse over the accept button. Smiling, let them keep scrambling. Let Trent keep sending emails full of buzzwords and prayer. Let HR keep dialing from blocked numbers. They weren't asking how to fix it. They were asking how to contain me, and I hadn't even started speaking. Invitation came through as an email titled Final Exit Review Administrative Closure. Like this was just a routine box to check, not the corporate equivalent of a fuse about to meet gasoline. It was signed by Marcia from HR, who politely encouraged my attendance so they could ensure all outstanding matters were resolved. No mention of lawyers. No mention of paragraph 12C. Just bland, flavorless language trying to pretend the last 6 weeks hadn't happened. I replied with a single sentence. I'll be bringing legal counsel to the meeting. No emoji, no thanks, just that. Ilya and I arrived 5 minutes early. He wore a dark gray suit with a leather folder tucked under one arm and a look that said I bill by the hour and I am not here to play nice. I wore the same blazer I'd worn the day they fired me. Felt symbolic, full circle. Or maybe a funeral. We were ushered into the same conference room where I'd once given Q3 projections to a half-dozen execs who'd nodded while texting. The room was different now. Tense, heavy. Marcia sat at the end of the table, lips tight and smile too bright. Trent was on the left, fake chipper, acting like we'd run into each other at Starbucks. Kayla, good to see you. Hope you've been. I didn't acknowledge him. Didn't even blink. Just sat down and looked straight at the man across from me, Glenn Dubois, head of finance. He was older than I remembered, or maybe just sleep-deprived. Deep lines around the eyes, jaw clenched so tight you could see the tendons flex. Illy wasted no time. He opened his leather folder and pulled out a copy of my signed contract. He didn't even speak at first. Just flipped to the page, placed it on the table, rotated it toward Glenn, and tapped. Paragraph 12C, he said calmly. We'll wait while you read. Glenn leaned forward. The silence stretched long. Marcia shifted in her chair. Trent went very still. Glenn's eyes scanned the clause, then again, then slower the third time. His fingers tapped the edge of the paper like he was trying to wake up from a bad dream. Then his jaw unlatched just slightly and his face lost color like a Polaroid soaking in bleach. His voice was flat, quiet. Get the CFO on the phone, he said, not looking at anyone. Now, Marcia blinked. Glenn, I think we should first now, he repeated, sharper this time. Call him. Trent tried to jump in. I mean, let's not escalate before we fully understand the intent of the language. Lee cut him off with a casualness that bordered on predatory. The intent is very clear. Severance and indemnity are triggered by her termination during a pending audit period, of which Vireon was notified prior to Kayla's dismissal. He leaned back, folding his hands over the folder like a man watching the first card drop in a house of them. Also relevant, the clause requires outside legal review once activated. That review never occurred. You've breached your own contract, and depending on how the audit report reads, you may have also exposed your government funding streams to compliance risk. Trent's smile melted. Fast. Door opened and someone handed Marcia a phone. Glenn took it without a word, pressed a button, and put it on speaker. This is Sam Keller, came the voice on the line, CFO. Sounded like he was mid-golf game or post-martini. What's up? Glenn didn't sugarcoat. You need to come in or get on video, now. Legal counsel's here. Contractual clause was triggered and we've already breached it. Paragraph 12C, silence on the line. Then, shit. Elise smiled for the first time. Just a little, the kind of smile that says checkmate's coming, but I'll let you squirm for another 2 moves. I stayed silent the entire time, didn't speak. Didn't need to, because I wasn't there to make a scene. I was there to make sure they understood exactly who they'd underestimated and exactly how expensive that mistake was about to become. I looked at Trent once, just once, and caught that flicker of panic in his eyes. Finally, he was starting to realize the game wasn't rigged in his favor anymore. It was rigged by someone who knew the rulebook better than he ever would. The speakerphone crackled as the CFO came back on, voice low and tight like he already knew there'd be no clean way out of this. All right, he said. Read me the clause. He didn't even flinch. He cleared his throat like a man preparing to recite a eulogy, flipped the contract around again. Read, in the event of involuntary termination during an active internal or external audit cycle, wherein the employee has direct or historical oversight of audit-relevant systems, severance and indemnity shall be awarded in accordance with Section 9, regardless of at-will classification. Termination under these circumstances shall trigger a legal review clause requiring third-party compliance counsel. The room went dead. You could have heard the carpet fibers holding their breath. Marcia from HR blinked rapidly like someone who just remembered they left the oven on. Trent tried to lean forward and speak, but Glenn held up a hand without looking at him, just flat-palmed the air like a referee pausing a fight. The CFO exhaled hard through his nose. Jesus Christ. Elise smiled. Let me be abundantly clear so there's no confusion. You terminated Miss Turner while fully aware of a pending audit cycle, an audit that touched systems she built, oversaw, and documented. You failed to initiate legal review. You issued no formal compliance memorandum. And then you attempted to retroactively buy her silence with an NDA after the audit notice hit your doorstep. Those are serious claims, the CFO said, though his tone lacked even a drop of confidence. They're not claims, Ali replied. They're facts. Documented, time-stamped, cross-referenced. We've preserved everything: server logs, access history, deletion trails, even the shredded file inventory from your weekend document disposal. Every one of those decisions has a digital fingerprint. And if this goes to court, so will every person in this room. That's when I watched it happen. HR went gray, not just pale, gray, like someone had sucked the blood right out of Marcia's skin. Her mouth opened slightly, as if some pre-written HR phrase had tried to escape before realizing it would be a death sentence. Trent, bless him, still tried to talk. Let's just hold on a second, this doesn't have to be adversarial, he said, voice shaking but still drenched in fake calm executive tone. We're open to conversation. We can look at the language, maybe renegotiate. No, Elise said, voice sharp as glass. The time for conversation ended when you shredded compliance documents and sent her home with no severance while an audit was pending. The clause is active. The breach is clear. The only thing we're renegotiating now is how loud we have to make this before you do the right thing. Glenn finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Sam, we're cooked. The CFO was silent on the line. Then, all right, I need a minute. We'll reconvene. Don't say anything else on the record. Click. The line went dead. No one in the room moved. Even Trent had gone quiet, the blood finally drained from his sunburnt little nepotism-ripened face. I could see him calculating, trying to remember what he'd signed, what he'd deleted, what he'd approved without reading. And I just sat there. I didn't gloat, didn't smile, didn't lean back and toss off a one-liner like in some courtroom drama. That's not how any of this works. I just watched the panic spread like a slow leak in a pressure tank, everyone realizing they weren't in control anymore. Realizing they'd gone too far, too fast, and forgotten to check the fine print of the wreckage they left behind. I picked up my pen and tapped it twice against the contract. No words, just the sound of a countdown, because they knew what was coming, and it wasn't just severance. It was a reckoning. The envelope arrived by courier, not email. Heavy paper. Wax seal, no logo. The kind of formality you don't use unless you're trying to impress someone you previously underestimated. I opened it at my kitchen table with hands that didn't shake, not even a little. Inside, 3 documents. 1, a settlement agreement. 2, a retainer contract. And 3, a cover letter from Vireon's general counsel that didn't include an apology, just a neatly typed acknowledgement that in light of recent findings, Vireon Systems accepts the terms set forth: triple severance, full reimbursement of legal expenses, a 1-year consulting retainer with 0 deliverables, payable monthly, contingent only upon my silence during and after the audit. They didn't want me to speak. Didn't want me to write a memoir, leak an email, whisper a word to the compliance officer who'd been circling since spring. They wanted peace. A fragile, desperate kind of peace. They were willing to pay for it. I signed it. Not because they earned my silence, but because I'd already said everything I needed to. A week later, I scheduled one final visit to the office under the terms of the agreement. Escort required. Pre-approved time slot. A full HR rep waiting in the lobby like I was a visiting dignitary or a radioactive crate. I walked in wearing black like I was attending a funeral. And in a way, I was. Not for myself, for them. The building smelled the same: cheap air freshener, burnt coffee, and the cold sterility of laminate ambition. They gave me 10 minutes to retrieve my things. I didn't need 10. I walked straight to my old desk, ignored the new clutter that wasn't mine, reached into the drawer and pulled out a single red folder. One I'd deliberately left behind. Not because I forgot it, because I wanted them to wonder why. Inside it was nothing but a copy of the original vendor SOP I'd written 5 years ago, the one Trent deleted, rewrote, and then botched so badly it helped trigger the audit. A little parting gift just for me. As I turned to leave, I heard him. Trent, standing in the lobby, pacing near the glass windows, mid-argument with someone on the phone. His voice was low and frantic. I didn't catch the words, didn't care to. He didn't see me, or maybe he did. But I didn't look at him, didn't slow, didn't flinch. I passed him like he was furniture. Just another dated fixture in a building that no longer knew what kept it standing. The HR escort trailed behind me like a nervous shadow. As we reached the exit, she cleared her throat like she wanted to say something. Maybe good luck, maybe sorry, but she didn't. She knew it wouldn't matter. Outside, the sky was that soft Midwestern gray that never quite commits to rain. I stepped into it without an umbrella, didn't need one. I'd weathered the storm already. And as the doors closed behind me for the last time, I felt lighter than I had in months, not because I'd won, but because I'd walked away with my name intact and my silence paid in full. I didn't get justice. I got something better, leverage. And as I slid into my car, folder beside me, engine humming like it knew the story too, I thought only one thing. I gave them 14 years. All they had to do was read page 3. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.